there are stirrings and gifts inside of you that you take for granted, that you normalize, that are the very things that the world needs to see to come alive. And that it takes all of us. I don't try to be someone that I'm not. I don't try to exhaust skill sets that aren't mine. I don't try to boast of a success that I haven't created. I certainly don't try to take success that's been created in my life as a sole endeavor.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric Oberembt, and you're listening to Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. We talk about real shit, what's on our minds, and don't give a fuck if it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for some real shit.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. I'm your host, Eric Oberembt. I love how much you got entertainment by that.
Got me.
Today is going to be a fun episode. I'm super excited. We are hanging out here in Tulsa at the Win All Day Strength facility. Is it a facility? Gym?
Like a gym facility.
Gym facility.
Facility.
I was graciously given the opportunity to be able to use this location to interview a few people that I respect, and I'm excited to hear their story and what they're doing now and how they help people, because that's really what this show's about, is how do we help people? How do we give back to our communities, to our people, whatever it is. Also, we don't have any sponsors, so Zyn, for all of your nicotine needs. It's fucking delicious. They have cinnamon, citrus. You mix it up and put like different lids on, so it's like Christmas every time you put a little nicotine in your lip. So Zyn, for all your nicotine needs. We're trying to get Zyn to sponsor the show, but they won't respond to us. So I'm just going to keep doing clips. I'm going to keep doing clips and keep sending it to them. So
good call.
All right, so I'm going to introduce my guest today. My guest today is Cody Jefferson. Cody, thank you for being here.
It's good to be here. Yeah, it's good to be here.
We do things a little different here.
What an intro.
Right?
Yeah, we're here. We're here.
We like to just have conversations.
That's good.
Right?
I love it.
So to circle back a little bit, to let everybody know how we met.
Yeah.
So I came up here 2-3 months ago, I think it was, something like that, for the starting line games that Cole was putting on.
Yep.
And I didn't know who you were. You showed up, you were speaking, and it's always interesting. I talk about this a lot, but when you we meet people all the time.
Sure.
Right? Going to conferences, speaking, doing the things, shows, whatever, and you meet people all the time, and more times than not, I meet people and I go, okay, glad I don't ever have to hang out with you again.
Yeah.
Like, that was a lot of fucking work and energy that I can't get back.
I love you, but sometimes walking in love is walking in distance.
There you go.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, like when we talked and kind of connected, like I really enjoyed our conversation. Yeah. I was like, I want to know this guy better. I think it'll be fun to know this guy better. Sure. And so you extending the invitation to come up here and hang out with some of your people and everything was a big deal, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this. And we were doing a little fitness competition, and tell everybody, you hung out for 3 days with fucking shingles.
Well, I mean, like the full story is that I contracted shingles, and then the next day, so they expressed, right? So they become visible, and now I know I have shingles, never had them before, and it is just it's your head being spiked on the thorn of a nightmare that you can't imagine. So there it is. The next day, so that was a Thursday, Friday, I fly to Vegas to host 2 events back to back.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And then fly straight from Vegas to Scottsdale for 3 days to shoot a pilot episode for a TV series. And then flew directly back here on a Thursday to come straight to the games. Yeah, so like there was just no downtime with the shingles. It was a lot. And it was a lot of being on.
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot of being on.
And stress makes it worse, right?
So
or stress induces it.
Stress induces it, and it can exacerbate the symptoms of the shingles themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
How long did it take to get over it?
I mean, I was over it on day one. But
fair point.
It took, I still have a scar from it, which I think will always be there. From what I understand, it will always be there. But it took a solid 45 days.
Right.
For the pain and the scabbing and all of the junk to go away, and to be able to actually feel good enough to like go to the gym and train.
Do stuff, yeah. And normally chicks dig scars, but not that one.
Yeah, not this one. It's not like a cool scar.
No, it's kind of gross.
Just like purple, like yeah, it looks like a weird birthmark.
Looks like you have a thing.
Yeah. It's like a weird birthmark.
At the end of the day.
It's awesome.
Were you planning on like working out with everybody when you were here if you wouldn't have had the shingles?
No, yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
I mean that was the whole point of the thing was to be a part of the. And for everybody that doesn't know, there's no air conditioning in this gym.
It is hot as fuck.
It's very warm in here, and your boy decided to wear all black,
Yep.
which is my uniform of choice. And so, yeah, I planned on working out. I mean, it was certainly part of the conversation. Just come train with
I
you
got
guys.
sick.
Yeah, you did.
Like after that first night, because
Yeah.
I don't usually train at night.
Sure.
And the shit that they had us doing with the prowlers and everything, I've never felt that sick in my life.
Really?
And then I didn't sleep the next night. I woke up every hour.
Yeah.
And like I was checking my heart rate.
Yeah.
And like in the middle of the night, I was waking up with 140, 150.
Heart rate?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Like the
Yeah.
whole night. So I slept for 3 hours and then got up the next morning and then came back
Did it again.
and did it again. And then the next night I actually got some sleep. So like
Yeah.
the last day I was good, but that was very intense.
It was.
And what I loved about it, and what I like talking about here, is doing some uncomfortable shit
Sure.
that you're not used to doing, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
To do that, is that something that you stress in your coaching or talking or whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, not to the point of making yourself sick, certainly. And I do think that we live in a culture that celebrates the hustle and the grind to the point that I think it's a bit exhaustive. And I believe that it can exacerbate some unhealthy tendencies as much as it can produce healthy outcomes.
Agreed.
So absolutely, we talk a lot about setting a standard and setting a standard in all areas, not just for us, but for our spouses, for our kids, for the people that we lead or walk with in any capacity, but certainly not at the detriment of your physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual health.
Right.
Certainly not at the detriment of your financial or your marital health.
So and again, we haven't even got into like what you do or whatever, but you do some coaching.
I do some coaching.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you enjoy that?
And no, I hate what I do.
Well, here's why I ask.
I enjoy what
Here's
I
why
do.
I ask, because I do a fair amount of speaking.
Sure.
I do a little bit of coaching. I've done coaching groups before where I've coached groups.
Yeah.
But you also do a ton of other shit.
Yeah.
So like it's finding that time and then and being like, okay, am I investing this time into that when I could be doing this, right?
So,
and that's why I asked the question, right?
Well, I love leading. So I was a pastor for 13 years occupationally. I would say I'm still a pastor now. It's just the capacity and the
What does that mean
framing has changed.
occupationally? Like
that means I got paid to be a pastor.
Okay, all right.
So like occupational ministry means ministry was my occupation.
Okay.
As a believer.
And you make big money doing that.
I think my 2016, which is the last full year I was in ministry, my W-2 was $33,000.
Cool.
Yeah, it was massive. Balling on a budget.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that, though, is I didn't know that because of my standard of living and because of the standard of living in Oklahoma, I did not. It was fine. Like
Right.
the entrepreneurial space didn't exist to me. You know, high income didn't exist to me. I'm from the country. Like I'm from
Right.
rural Oklahoma. Grew up in a single bedroom trailer. We eventually moved up to a double wide, which was, that's high living.
That's a big deal.
It was massive.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was never a frame of reference. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And it wasn't until, it's very interesting, it wasn't until I was introduced to the lack that I didn't know existed that I started to feel the lack that existed. And I think that's a really interesting paradigm to have shift in your life when you can be completely content in your situation and in your kind of socioeconomic, area, and then somebody introduced you to something and all of a sudden what was enough isn't enough now, or what was good enough isn't good enough now, and what was the height of your potential in the ceiling could actually be a floor. Mm-hmm. So,
and that was just in 2016.
So I stepped out of occupational ministry in 2017, early 2017, about March.
Wow.
Yeah, right before Easter.
And then immediately jumped into what?
So I So it wasn't immediate. So I had started coaching in 2016, but in the health and fitness space. So I was doing online training.
Okay.
And it got to the point where there was a number of things happened in that year of 2016. I went through a divorce with my son's mother. Quite a few family members and friends passed away. I lost 8 people in a year at all those funerals. They were all very, very tragic and very violent, like murders, suicides, overdoses.
Oh my God.
And from 18 months, I had an 8-month-old niece that was murdered. I had a 19-year-old sister that was murdered. I had a sister-in-law that took her own life. I had a best friend that took his own life. Like, there was a lot happening in the midst of the divorce, and kind of you don't really know up from down.
Right.
It's just too much to process.
Too much.
But you're on.
Right.
So that was all coming to a head. I had started the personal training kind of opportunity. It was very simple to do online back in 16, 17. Mm-hmm. And in 2017, I approached the board of my church, and we just recognized that we were going in different directions. No good fallout story. We were just going in different directions. I recognized that my capacity inside of the conversation of training and coaching could far surpass what I was doing in ministry, and my reach could far surpass, because there was a lot of posts that I was making on social media that were going viral, and just talking about the loss and my own wrestling with faith.
Yeah.
And there was also some wrestling that I needed to do that I didn't feel like I could do behind a pulpit.
Right.
And I needed to figure out what I believed outside of what I was raised to believe, what I was paid to believe, what I went to school to believe. Like, in the midst of doing all the right things and praying all the right prayers and giving the money to all the right places, why was all this stuff still happening?
Yeah.
And so that's why I stepped out, and I had already had a little bit of a base, but certainly when I started into the coaching field, there was a lot I didn't know. So I was flipping Harleys out of my garage. So I've been a licensed mechanic for 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Licensed barber as well. So I was doing haircuts out of my front room. I toured as a musician for about a decade inside of ministry. So I was doing guitar lessons, piano lessons, vocal lessons, playing bars and clubs on the weekends that I didn't have my son, and kind of making it all work. I was doing graphic design and building websites for churches who couldn't afford to hire someone on staff full time. I was just piecemealing it together to hit my burn. But I was doing it for me.
Right.
And it was great.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so
tell me about the you brought up when you're going through all of that shit.
Sure.
You're going through a divorce.
Yeah.
You're going through people dying around you at exponential rates.
Like every couple months.
Insane,
yeah.
Right. And then you had this, like, and you said it. You had kind of like is it a crisis of faith type of thing?
Yeah.
Trying
I would say so.
Because this is a hard conversation. To be authentic, like, this is a hard conversation that I have to start having, like, with my daughter, right? About what other people believe, what you were taught to believe, like you said, what you were paid to believe.
Yeah.
They don't know up from down when they're born.
Yeah.
Right? And so they get indoctrinated by whatever it is that their parents believe.
And everything is indoctrination.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, it gets a harsh terminology from the spiritual and religious side.
Yeah.
But everything is indoctrination.
Right.
Right? Brushing your teeth in the morning.
Right.
We're indoctrinating them to do things that we think will be of best interest to make them productive human beings.
Right. So how'd you navigate that? This is interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, some ways healthy and some ways not.
Okay.
Just in a sense that
I like to hear the unhealthy ways that you dealt with it.
Nothing really that grand.
Damn it.
Yeah, nothing really that.
Those
grand.
are my stories, I guess.
Like, I'm the guy that's 40 and I've never even been to a strip club.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you grew up you're a good guy?
I grew up always wanting to please people. So we talk about addiction. Like, I was addicted to affirmation and approval.
Okay.
So I always wanted to be.
So that was why I used.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel good enough to be around the people, and that they'd like me if I had drugs and if I had all the things that they wanted.
And so I went through that a little bit in high school.
Okay.
So here's a really interesting point to that. So I was the guy that kind of moved around in high school all the time, kind of friends with everybody, but friends with nobody at the same time.
Yep.
You know how you can feel like in control and out of control simultaneously?
Yep.
So that was me. And I did really well academically, but in a small town school, it's cooler to be good at sports and like make C's. Those guys get thrills. So I started experimenting with some narcotics at an early age to try and just make myself normal.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Real ones or weed?
No, like real ones.
Okay,
Weed made me nauseous, so I went ahead and bumped it on up.
Yeah.
And so when I graduated high school, I was hanging out with friends that were not healthy for me, but they're the friends that were familiar to me.
Yep.
And I was managing a garage, so again, been a licensed mechanic for a number of years, and I was wrenching on cars. I had separated myself from the church. I thought it was just man's way of feeling significant and meaningful in the world, and he needed a place to feel like he was created for purpose, right? Because otherwise, society as a whole devolves when we don't have some sort of compass of morality. And I'm working at the garage, and the owner keeps inviting me to church. I'm like, bro, we have been down this road before.
Right.
And it was an interesting season for me. I'm like 19. I am managing people that are 40, and I've got a really solid head on my shoulders. I'm in university, but I work through college. I don't have the cool experience. And he's like, come to coffee with me. We need to talk about the shop. And this was a Saturday after.
Ooh, I feel like he was tricking you.
So we go to coffee, and it's inside the church. Now, I didn't know churches like this existed, though, because all I'd known was like a small Southern Baptist church that I grew up in that I was like asked to not go to.
Right.
And so we go to this church, and it's like 5,000 people. I've never seen anything like this before. And the pastor comes out, and this guy immediately shares a story about getting kicked out of school for drugs and alcohol, rides a Harley, which, again, like, come on.
Yeah.
Has this like surfer blonde hair.
Right.
Super charismatic. I'm like, I see so much of myself. I'm like, this is me.
Right.
Just older.
Right.
And he's talking about a grace that I'd never heard of before. I'm like, this I can be into. What is this, Jesus? So that night I answered the altar call. And
what does that mean?
That just means I decided, like, I'm going to go this direction. I'm going to recommit my life to this path.
Okay.
And I don't know what that holds for me. I don't know what that means, but I'm in. Whatever it is that you're selling, I'm in on that. I'm in on that faith. I'm in on that idea of doctrine and spirituality and Christianity. And just charismatic evangelicalism. And so I go and I move out from living with my best friend and get totally straight-laced, clean. I start working at the church 2 months later. It was part-time, leading worship.
Yeah.
I had no business doing it.
Right.
But he saw something in me. We became very close over those years, to where, like, that's where I met the gentleman who I would later apprentice under to get my barber's license, to be a licensed barber. And it's interesting now on the backside of that one ask to go to coffee, because the best friend that I lived with is also the best friend that I buried on my 33rd birthday in 2017.
Oh my God.
With his 5-year-old son sitting in the front row that you heard me tell the story about. And we stayed friends, and I would continue to try to pour into him, but there was a separation. It was really unfortunate. My 2 other best friends from that season are both in prison now for drugs, for meth. It's interesting how one yes can change the entire trajectory of your existence. Now, the problem was that going into that season of 13 years of ministry, that I still didn't know who I was. And what got exacerbated inside of that season was that now I'm in a position where pleasing was like, that's the frame. And being all things to all people, and being able to solve problems, and looking for problems to solve.
Right.
And now my intellect can be useful, and now my charisma can be useful, and my natural talent. I'm a guy who, probably like you, like, I'm just kind of good at everything.
Yeah.
You know? And most people don't understand that. Like, I'd love to be just good at one thing.
Right. And just focus on it.
That'd be so much easier.
Yeah.
But when you're good at a lot of things, and then you're told your whole life that God has a plan and a purpose for you, I don't want to let him down. I don't want to choose the wrong thing.
Right.
Just because I'm good at it doesn't mean it's the right thing.
Right.
So I'm running 8 roles at the church, being all things to all people. It's eventually, and I shared this at our event, was part of the downfall of my marriage, was that, I was I was so addicted to being needed. And I grew up in a fairly unstable, like in my early years, fairly unstable home. My parents divorced when I was really young, and they both had their propensities in mental instability in some ways. And so I was consistently navigating, trying to make sure they were okay.
Really?
Independently of each other. Yeah, a lot of suicide threats, a lot of, like, it was just normal. I didn't know until I was in my 30s that not everybody's parents threatened to kill themselves all the time.
Oh.
I didn't, genuinely, I didn't know that wasn't normal.
Yeah.
It's not something you talk about.
Right.
And so there was just a lot of trauma that was normalized for me. And so while I thought I was highly empathetic, and I am, but also it's a trauma response to being able to read when people are in trauma and seeking to fix that. So the other problem that comes on the back end of that is that when that kind of dysregulated nervous system is what's normal, peace can't exist. And so you find yourself, and this is where addiction comes into play as well, is you find yourself creating chaos.
Yeah.
Because you soothe yourself in the fixing of it or the eradicating of it.
Oh shit!
Which can come in the form of creating problems to solve.
Yep.
Or medicating to numb chaos because it's what's normal.
Yeah. So because that 100% resonates with me, because I would go through a cycle in my life that was always 3 years long.
Yeah.
And so I would go get in trouble with the law.
Sure.
Right. Get a DUI, whatever it was, so that I would then be on paper, as it's called, right? And so then I'd be on paper, and I would have to fix that problem, right? And I'd be good-ish during that period so that I could win, whether I had a girlfriend or a wife or whoever it was, and I'd be good with them, and everything was great. But then as soon as that time was up and I felt like I had completed my task, I would self-sabotage unconsciously so that I could have
another
problem
to fix
again, to be able to fix. And I never thought of it that way before. I just, through my recovery, it's like I just knew that I self-sabotaged looking back. Because I told this story to a guy that works for me who went to a baseball game the other night, and we were walking and talking, and I said that just my insane alcoholic brain, I remember I got my second or third DUI, and I was on paper for 3 years, and I had an interlock blower in my truck, which, by the way, I still do.
Okay.
I've had it for 14 years.
Yeah.
14 years. I got it when I was 30 years old, and I'm 44, right? Because my last fourth offense felony DUI got me a 15-year license revocation and some time in jail and everything else. But I remember the end of that second or third one, I got done. I got the interlock taken off. I got my regular license taken back, right? And this was my thought. Guess what? Now I can drink and drive legally as long as I'm under the limit. I don't have the propensity to be able to stay under the limit, mind you, but in my mind, I was like, now I'm legal.
Yeah.
Right? That's insane. And then it doesn't take more than 6 months and I'm back in jail.
Well, there's something interesting. I don't know anything about your history, but I do know that for any of us who grow up in any sense of dysfunction or chaos in our home, there's a sense of not deserving peace and not knowing what peace feels like. And peace can feel like a threat because it's not about what's healthy for you, it's about what's normal, because the brain doesn't care about what you actually want.
Right.
It just cares about confirming itself to be right and confirming patterns and confirming a cognitive bias. And oftentimes I find that we sabotage peace even though we pray for it because subconsciously we feel like we don't deserve it. And in an interesting way, the only way that we can find peace is to create chaos in the midst of it, because chaos is what peace feels like to us.
I definitely did not feel like I deserved it.
Yeah.
Right? There's days still today that I don't think that I have the feeling of that I don't deserve the life that I have now.
Sure.
Because of the chaos that I caused in my past. I have moments where I have to be like, no, stop. You've done the work. You do deserve that. Or I literally just, because I'm a selfish little prick, like need somebody to tell me, no, you deserve it. Like,
right.
It's okay.
Right.
Like you can have it and be happy. I remember when I got out of rehab, or when I was in rehab, I was not a pray guy. I was not a religious guy. But I remember being in treatment, and if you know anything about 12 steps,
Sure.
right, it revolves around spirituality, and it revolves around the word God.
Yeah.
And they tell you when you're there that you just have to be open to the idea, leave the door open, that there is some type of power greater than yourself, and that it's not you.
Right.
Right? And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I can get behind that. And I never prayed, or I didn't know what it was to pray. I thought when you were a kid, I thought it was like you pray for a bicycle.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
It's a whimsical genie.
Yeah, things that you want, right?
Yeah.
And I was taught the Serenity Prayer in treatment, right?
Yes.
And I remember coming home, the first tattoo I got when I came home was a Serenity Prayer on my shoulder, because I couldn't sleep because I still had an addict living in my house because I couldn't afford my mortgage. I still had an addict in my house that was partying all night. I couldn't afford to kick him out yet. And I would hide in my bedroom with my dog, right? And I would try to go to sleep, and instead of counting sheep, I would literally stare at the ceiling and recite that over and over and over again until I fell asleep. And I realized later that, like, that was all I wanted. I wanted serenity.
Yeah.
I wanted peace. I just didn't know what the fuck it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to get it, because I didn't understand what it actually is. I mean, I think there's days today I still don't know what it is, right? But like, I had no idea what being calm meant, right? What being happy meant. Because what are we taught now with the books that we read? That you have to be happy first.
Sure.
So that everything else comes. You don't do all the things and then become happy.
Right.
Well, it's like, well, how the fuck do I get happy?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's tough.
Yeah. Well, and I also think it's a fool's errand. I don't think that. Why do we need to be happy? Like, why is that important? I think there's something about being at peace.
I think that's what it means for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think we've done a real disservice in trying to communicate to people that they need to feel a certain way all the time. You can't.
Right.
Like, people ask me, like, "Hey man, how are you?" I'm like, I'm well.
Right.
Like, are you happy? Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sad. Sometimes I'm pissed.
Yeah.
But I have peace.
Right.
And I think that so long as you chase an emotional experience and chase happiness, the problem is happiness is driven by dopamine. And so then we keep looking for the next fix of what's going to give us that happiness, which is why it's always fleeting. But peace and joy, those encompass all things. I can have joy in my heart and in my soul in the midst of trauma and chaos. I mean, we talk about addiction.
Yeah.
Like, my real talk, my older brother is in prison right now. He's in and out all the time. He went back a few months ago. My younger brother is a recovering addict. My baby niece was murdered by an addict. My older sister was murdered by an addict. I grew up with a parent that was an addict. So the conversation of addiction for me is one that is very relevant, and recovery is very relevant. I just chose to spin my addiction in a way that was productive. It wasn't necessarily healthy.
Right. But it was productive.
But it was productive, and it was useful.
Right. I think that's what I do now.
Sure.
Right.
I think that when we have those tendencies and we have those leanings, I don't necessarily think that it's a good or bad thing.
Right.
Because then we label ourselves as bad.
Right.
It's just a thing.
Right.
I have a propensity to be very aggressive towards what I set my mind to.
Right.
And if I set my mind towards things that are not useful, or towards numbing, or towards isolating or medicating, then certainly I will take that to an extreme.
Yes.
There was a season after my grandfather passed away in the mid-2000s, and my dad had a motorcycle accident, that I started drinking. And it was really because I was in a position that I was overwhelmed, one, with grief, two, I couldn't shut it off, three, I couldn't shut off the need to want to work and please. And so at night it was just trying to shut it off.
Yes.
And then it becomes earlier earlier.
Yeah.
Earlier.
It's just all day.
Then it's all day.
Yeah.
And I never got to the point of like heavy morning or day drinking, but certainly got to the point where I was drinking too much at night and recognized that this is a real problem. Mm-hmm. Or certainly could be. Yeah. A real problem.
Yeah.
And thankfully had the wherewithal to put some real boundaries in place. And now, as a result, I mean, now with what I do and the things that I'm a part of, which we haven't even dove into. No. You don't even know what I do. Who I am.
No, nobody knows. Yeah.
I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
And
that's how these go. So.
But now, like, and I think you could probably agree. I mean, I think there could probably be a way in which it could infiltrate. I mean, any addiction can, but there's so much going on now. I feel that when a man knows his purpose, because it's been said that a man without purpose is a ship without a rudder, that when you have purpose, and purpose is just a confirmation in all the things that you do. Like, it's a commodity that we've sold in the church and we've sold through personal development that you have to find it.
Right.
You don't find it. Okay, keep looking, keep digging up rocks.
Right.
You create it every day. And so when you have a mission and when you have goals that you're aligned to, which is why people like us focus so much on goal setting, because if we don't, and if we don't have something that we're working toward, it's just the way that we're bent, vices will overtake.
Agreed.
Like why do I have a schedule? Why am I so regimented in what I do and how I live and how I operate? I have to be.
Right.
There isn't another way for me.
And then people look at you and don't understand how you do all the things that you do. And
right.
It's like, that's how.
That is how.
That's how.
Yeah. And what's really beautiful is in this season of my life, I've really learned to be content without being complacent, to be really content with where I'm at and who I am, to not try to, Richard Rohr, who is a theologian, says that in the book Falling Upward, that true spiritual contentment is when there's nothing to prove, hide, or protect. And when you can enter into that space and you don't have to flex on anyone, it's not a pissing contest, which can be very prevalent in the circles that we occupy.
100%.
When you seek to go, when you find, what peace is for me? Not needing to be a here I am person, but really being able to lean into there you are. I don't need to tell you about me.
Right.
I really like to hear about you.
Right.
And that's a really interesting and pastoral Jesus space to occupy. But it certainly comes on the backside of having to do a lot of confrontation, which is why we have the one simple question inside of our brotherhood, which is, what needs to die in me today to become the man that I said that I would be?
I love that.
Yeah. And it's not a question you ask once. It's a daily death. And nobody wants to talk about death, because death is really messy, and death is pain, and death is agony, and death is loss of self, loss of vices, loss of excuses. It is loss of stories, but it's only in death that you can find resurrection.
I am deathly afraid of death.
Yeah.
Like,
there was a season where everybody around me was dying and I thought it was me.
Yeah. Ooh. That is something I don't talk about a lot. I stay so far away from that subject.
Yeah.
And I hate it when my daughter asks me about it.
Yeah.
Like, hate it.
Yeah.
Where's Tank, our old dog? The fuck, in the ground. Like, where's Grandpa? Where's great grandpa? And it's like, I don't know how to, I don't know how to have those conversations sometimes, because I don't want to tell her, I'm going to sound awful here, but I don't want to tell her, he's sitting in the sky looking down on us,
sure.
Right? Like, I hope that's true.
Right.
Like, that would be fan-fucking-tastic.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I buy that. And if I don't buy it, I'm not going to sell it to my daughter.
Sure.
Either, right?
Right.
I'm still the goof that goes and sits by his grave when I go back to Omaha and cries and talks to him.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I still do that every time I'm back.
My grandparents raised my brother and I, and my grandfather passed in 2013, 10 years ago, and there's not one day that has passed in 10 years that I literally don't think about calling him.
Yep.
Not one day.
Anytime something cool happens,
I just want to call him.
Yep. I think I talk to him probably 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't have anybody in my life that I can go to with those real deep, like I love my wife and we talk and everything, right? But like my grandpa was my dad.
Yeah.
He raised me since I was 7. And he was my person, right?
Yeah.
And he taught me business. I worked with him until he died, and I took over the company and all that. And like, but he was my person that I could go to with anything.
And there was never any judgment.
No, maybe in the moment.
Sure.
Right, but I knew that it was like we could fight to the point where like we'd want to punch each other in the fucking face. But literally the next day or that night, it was, you all right?
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah.
Right? Like he was a son of a bitch, just like I am sometimes, right? But the most loving person that you've ever met.
Sure.
And when you lose that human, that's scary because you don't know what you're gonna do.
Right.
Right? You have to step up.
Yep.
Right? But then who do you talk to?
Yeah.
Who do you talk to? Who do you call? Right? Because that was the only person that I knew that I could truly trust.
Well, and that just genuinely makes me really sad for you.
I know. It makes me sad daily.
I can tell you that having deep friendships in my life with people with men that I know, I mean, I love my wife and I can tell her anything. There's something about having men in your life that have your back. Yeah. And that you can trust, and that oftentimes I don't think that we need answers to certain questions. I think we just need somebody to sit with us.
Agreed. Yeah.
And there's a real gift that I've been gifted in my life to be that for a lot of people over the past 20-something years and maybe even longer. But certainly as an adult, and I think that's where I find myself now, which is why I say I'm still a pastor. There's something very, very sacred about being able to hold space in someone's pain and in their joy. Yeah. My grandfather was the first person, and really I would say my wife shows me as well. He was the first person that showed me who Jesus was, like through how he loved me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think where I struggle with that is I feel like I can be that and I am that for others.
Sure. I feel the same.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And then I have seasons, like you like to talk about, right? Where I have seasons where I do have those people in my life. Yeah. And then something happens where it's like, oh, it wasn't about this. It was about you, right? Yeah. I met somebody the other day. This is how I judge people when I talk to them, right? Yeah. Is if our initial conversation is you talking for 20 minutes about you, I don't really want to know you. Sure. Right? Not that I need you to ask me about me. Yeah. But it's, are you the type of person that only cares
about themselves?
About themselves, right? Yeah. Because I want to hear about you, right? I just want you to want to hear about me. I don't necessarily I don't need to fucking talk about me for 2 hours, right? But when you look at somebody in the eyes, can you tell that they genuinely like care about you as a human? And I think that's what we're all searching for, right? Well, connection is all I've been looking for, and that's why I drink and used.
Sure. Well, I think that at the end of the day, and I think this has certainly been exacerbated by the prevalence of social media and the posturing and performance of social media. Yeah. And the vanity metrics of likes, comments, and shares, is that we're people who are desperately seeking to be known. Yeah. But we will settle every day for being seen.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth? Wow. Okay. Before we wrap up, let's let everybody know what the fuck you do. Yeah. We can throw it in the front if we want and edit it. But and here's the thing, like, and people that watch and listen know this, like, I don't really care what the people do that come on my show. Sure. Because I want to know about the person. Yeah. I don't give a fuck if they sell shingles. I don't care if they're a billionaire. You know what I mean?
I was like, listen, I'm not trying to sell you my shingles.
Yeah, well, sorry. Roofing. Sorry, I'm in roofing.
I know. Right? I'm in roofing as well.
But like, I don't give a shit what people do. Yeah. I don't care if you have $10 billion or if you make $100,000. Sure. Like, I don't care. And I get wrapped up in the conversation because I enjoy that part of it and the connection, that I'm like, oh, I guess we should tell people what people do. But you do a ton of stuff, but do kind of tell everybody what you do, because I want them to be able to find you and whatever.
Man, so first and foremost, I am the father to Stetson Foster.
That is the only fucking thing that matters.
It is.
So, yes.
Yeah, he is.
And he's awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
He's awesome. And the only other Stetson I've ever met. I have a nephew now.
Yeah, he'll be there tonight.
Good.
When you come to the cookout, and which is also a very interesting thing. Just putting out into the like, hey, guys, I'm gonna grill some burgers on Friday. Who wants to come? And now we got guys coming from all over the country.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it goes to the conversation of being known over being seen, and how important community is.
Yeah.
And we'll go to the ends of the earth to find it.
And what did I say when you texted me? I said, I need a night with some guys.
Yeah. And here we are.
Yeah. I mean, that was why I said yes. You know, because I was like, I need to be surrounded
by
some good dudes.
Yeah.
To be able to connect and have a conversation about this. Sorry, go on.
Oh, you're fine. So, I am the husband to Sarah. I'm the bonus dad to Titus. I do a few different things. I do have a coaching consulting company called Embrace the Lion, and that was where the start of business really kind of hit a crossroads for me in 2017. We lead about 4,500 men all over the world in the conversation of what it is to go from good to great in life and in business. So the majority of those guys are going to be entrepreneurs. On the backside of that, I do some traveling and speaking as a keynote on conversations very similar to this. I'm a partner in a marketing agency, partner in a fitness company, partner in a private fund, in a commercial and residential roofing company, commercial and residential solar company. I've got my hands in quite a few things. But all that to say, never at the expense of who I am or who I'm becoming.
Right.
So I get to do a lot of really cool things in business, and we're building some things that I'm very, very excited about in a multitude of spaces and in a multitude of verticals. And all of the things that I did in ministry for all the organizational leadership and all of the ways in which I was seasoned to be a leader that I kind of took for granted in those seasons have come full circle, and I get to exhaust those talents and giftings now, which is a real beautiful thing. And I only share that to say that maybe to any of you listening or watching this, that there are stirrings and gifts inside of you that you take for granted, that you normalize, that are the very things that the world needs to see to come alive. And that it takes all of us. I don't try to be someone that I'm not. I don't try to exhaust skill sets that aren't mine. I don't try to boast of a success that I haven't created. I certainly don't try to take success that's been created in my life as a sole endeavor.
Right.
It has been the culmination of family who love me, of pastors who've sown into me, of parents who've trusted me with their kids as a youth pastor in my 20s, as communities who've trusted me as a pastor and as a teacher, and as people now who trust me as a mentor and a guide to walk with them through a myriad of seasons in life. And it's because of all of those things that I am hungry to continue seeing what God has in my life and for my life. And for yours.
Love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So now everybody, you know what the fuck he does.
There it is. There it is.
So the way that we always wrap these up is obviously like we just make shit up as we go, right?
Yeah.
And have a real conversation.
We all do.
But a lot of people, when they come into the show, they either had something on their mind that was like on their heart that they wanted to be able to talk about that I forgot to, or that we dipped into but we maybe didn't expand on. So at the last 3 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever it is, whatever you want to take, I always give the floor back to the guest to be able to either wrap up something for them, you know, for the audience to leave with, or something that I didn't bring up that you want to, you know, make sure that they all know.
How can I serve you?
Oh, I should have known that you were going to say that. That's a great question. You know what? That's a great question, and I'm really bad at that. The only time I've ever asked for help is when I got sober.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing, was like, you have to ask for help. I have never asked anybody for anything in my life, and whenever somebody that's as gracious as you asks a question like that, it always makes me extremely uncomfortable. Right? And maybe that was why you did it.
Yeah.
But it makes me extremely uncomfortable, and I need to start asking that to people more, right? Not to make them uncomfortable, but to be genuine, because I'm that A personality guy, like we all are, right? That I can fucking figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? And when somebody that genuinely asks that question like you, I literally got goosebumps, because like it warms my heart that there's people that do actually give a shit and that do care. And when they ask that question, it's not to be seen. It's because they actually want to know the answer to the question. I don't have an answer for you, but I appreciate you asking the question. So,
can I leave you with this?
Yes.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Cody, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I wish we would have got into stories. I wanted to hear more stories about your tattoos. Love your tattoos.
Just pick them and stick them, man.
I love your tattoos. But everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you got anything out of this, like we said, we don't have sponsors. I pay for all this shit. I do this because I want people to learn. I want people to find out who other people are. How they've succeeded, how they've gotten out of struggles and shit in their past. If you got anything from this, please share it. Please show the world that there is a way out, that you don't have to be miserable. You don't have to continue living as a piece of shit as I did for so many years. You can be better, you can be different. And I think that this interview encompassed all of that. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And remember, everybody, be authentic or get the fuck out.
Be authentic. Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic. Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic. Yeah. Swipes.